Hey there, all my fantastic fanatics. This is your man, Dr. Usher, coming at you live with a special guest.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Mat Nemeth.
With Mat Nemeth. This man is going to do some great things in the city of Jacksonville. But before we jump into that, Matt, can you please tell them a little bit about yourself?
I'll be honored. First of all, thanks for having me, Dr. Usher, and thank
No
you
problem.
for tuning in, everybody. My name is Mat Nemeth. I was born and raised in just outside Detroit, Michigan. As a young man of 3 years old, I knew what I wanted to do with my life, and that was get into law enforcement. Odd because no one in my family had been in law enforcement before, but at the age of 20, one of my good friends who had moved to South Florida came up and showed me a star, and that was all it took. So I loaded up my car with no plan B and drove from Michigan to Florida and began my law enforcement career back in 1987. And from that time to October of last year, that's what I've done with my entire life. It's devoted to the city in which I live.
So you actually work for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Up from 1996 through 2021.
Wow. So listen, man, sir, my brother, Mr. Nemeth, I hear that you are running for sheriff. Is that true?
That's very true.
Okay, listen. We all know that Jacksonville has some serious issues. And a lot of people are upset. So I'm going to ask you a simple question. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing Jacksonville, Florida right now? Because, I mean, before you give me the answer, you guys brought the questions, he's going to answer, but we need the answer to see if he understands what's the biggest issue. So let's be real. What's the biggest issue facing Jacksonville right now?
Not only have polls shown the largest answer to be violent crime, but people living in our communities know that to be the number one concern. So anybody who's not coming forward with a holistic plan to address that is probably not the right candidate for you. Number two is ever since 2020, we've seen our roadways turn into raceways. And in 2020, most people don't know because it's not really broadcast on the news very much, we lost 205 people on our roadways.
Wow.
Far beyond what we have in murders per year, which is still a very significant number. And then number three, it's our mental health and our homelessness issue. Years ago, I was trying to push this issue to our city council as a zone commander, explaining that we didn't want to look like some of these other cities around our country, that we need to get a handle on it now while it's just in our urban core, and now it is spread to every corner of our city, and now we're starting to see more and more aggressive panhandling and other issues that are stemming from that. And then the mental health issue. It's not just a Jacksonville issue, it's not a Florida issue, it's a national issue. And those are two issues that don't necessarily fall at the feet of the sheriff, but an engaged sheriff who's concerned about making a community better is going to make sure that they have a plan and they have a seat at the table to address those issues, not just kick that can down the road.
So let me ask you this. Compared to all the other candidates and even the other previous sheriffs that we've had in Jacksonville, now I'm not going to lie. I was here when Glover was sheriff. I moved into town during the last year or so of his reign. And I remember the difference of his presence in the city. Now, what do you plan, apart from what Mr. Glover did back, it was Glover, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Apart from what he did, because he was very vocal, he was very out in the public, JSO was very responsive to needs, very, you call him and there was no, get out of my way, don't waste my time. And over the years, I just noticed that JSO's presence became more, I guess, subdued. I don't know what the word to explain it is. I mean, you guys are there, but I don't know, just the energy that was there back in the early, I think it was 2003 or so, is not there like it is now. So what do you plan to do differently from the other candidates? We can't fix the past, but we can build a bright new future. So what do you plan on doing different?
Great question. The number one prerequisite for this job, and really for any job to be successful, is passion. If you are going to show up at 10 o'clock and leave after lunch, no matter what business you're in, you're going to fail. And you need a sheriff who is, no matter how good the resume is, if they're not passionate about addressing the issues that are facing our city, it doesn't matter what the resume looks like. So number one, you want someone who is all in for the right reasons, not doing it for the title, not doing it for the money, doing it because they want to see our city brighter and safer after 4 years for them having been there. Then You talked to Sheriff Glover. He was a beneficiary of COPS grants. So there were more officers there, and that's something I'll touch on a little bit later. But culture is critical to the success of our organization. And if you don't have an engaged sheriff who is pushing down culture, because culture always flows down from the top.
Wow.
If you don't have a sheriff who's passionate, who's engaged, and has a culture that is easily digestible by the men and women of the sheriff's office, we're all a cog on a wheel. Where do we fit? Why is it important that you're not doing something crazy? Because if I get arrested and I get fired, I haven't just let down my community. I haven't just let down my agency. I've let down the men and women to the right and left of me that relied on me to show up and provide safety and protection to our community. So culture is a critical component as well. Touching on the violent crime issue, I have a strategic plan that is different from anything. Now, I haven't heard much, to be honest. The other candidates haven't talked about.
No, I haven't. So hold up. He's got a strategic plan for violent crimes that he's going to state right here on this show. I'm going to sit back, tell everybody what this plan is. I'm interested.
So any public safety plan is going to have an internal and an external component. We already talked on culture. Culture, number one, has to be that we have to listen to our community. The community has a lot of valid concerns, number one, but they also have a lot of valid solutions. And if we're just going to come into your community and tell you what you need to know, tell you what you need to do, we're not making the best use of our relationship.
Oh, wow.
So number one is listen. Number two is I have 34 years of law enforcement experience, so I have an expertise to bring to the table. I have a depth of knowledge on day one as your sheriff that I can come in there and say I worked in corrections, patrol, investigations, community engagement, SWAT. Every major operational unit within law enforcement, I've been there. And so on day one, you don't want someone who's looking for on-the-job training type of apprenticeship. Or someone that tries to convince you that they're just there to take pictures and kiss babies. You want a sheriff who's going to stand between you and your loved ones and those that want to do them harm.
Wow.
So the plan internally is that we have gotten away from some of our national best practices. Those national best practices, as it relates to homicide, have allowed certain group of detectives to be overwhelmed with their caseload. What does that mean to you, the citizen? It means that there are murders on the street longer than they should be. And that's a problem. The secondary bad part of that, and it has a spillover effect, is when you overwork a detective, you burn them out, they leave.
Wow.
And so if they leave, you don't have detectives that have 10 and 15 years in death investigations to investigate. God forbid one of your loved ones is murdered. You want the best out there, as do I, as your sheriff, that's going to be able to resolve that case quickly. Externally, we already talked about listening. That's critical. We have 1,400 churches in this city. 1,400 churches in this city.
Wow.
And I can tell you, the city doesn't have a program that's going to fix crime. Because we don't really have a crime problem. We really have a heart problem, if you think about it.
That's true.
Because no matter how poor you are, no matter what neighborhood you live in, no matter your circumstance, no matter if you're in a food desert, if your heart's in the right place, and trust me, I've met thousands of people that are in dire circumstance, but their heart's in the right place, they're not committing crimes. They're not shooting their neighbors, they're not robbing people, they're not selling drugs, or doing the other things that we see that lead to the blight and despair in our communities. So, critical component. Getting those churches out there on a day-to-day sustained basis, and I'm talking about the right churches, the churches that truly want to see difference in our neighborhoods and that are willing to do sustained door-to-door tent meetings, all the things that we used to see back in the day.
That's right.
Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel, you just need to reinflate it. Because
Wow.
there are ideas from the past that are effective, that you look at the metrics and I say, wow, as a result of that program, things worked, things changed. And really, when you think about elections, and you think about politicians, and you think about churches, what you think about is hope. You want someone that says, if I'm there, if you elect me to that seat in 4 years, your hope is going to be greater. Your tomorrow is going to be brighter as a result of that person having been there. And that's my goal as your sheriff.
Wow.
Now, there are other internal changes that I've identified for the express purpose of bringing our detectives closer to our community. Property crimes, for example. We know pulling door handles and breaking into cars is a big issue. And we actually know that we had a murder committed as a result of a person that did that. And so something seemingly very minor of having a door handle pulled resulted in someone losing their life. I recommended it years ago and it got turned down. I'm going to move some of our property crime detectives out to the zones. It does a number of things. It puts them closer to the victim so they can have better communication. It puts them closer to the patrol officers so that when they're out there riding the beat, they can share information easier and better. And then the zone commanders who are in the 6 zones around our city, it'll put them under their chain of command and give them better accountability for what they're actually achieving.
Wow. Accountability is what we need in this city, because that's one of the biggest things I hear from clergymen all across the city. A lack of accountability, especially from black ministers, because they feel like JSO can just go out and do whatever they want to do and nobody holds them accountable. Under your plan, under your leadership, you're saying that, oh, there's going to be accountability. And the church is going to be included in that. And I'm excited about that, man.
Absolutely.
So, because I was like, I was going to ask you, how do you intend to make Jacksonville safer? But I'm like, well, dang, dude, you. So let me ask you this question then. Along the lines of when you were stating that, they turned down your idea when you were serving under their leadership, why do you think they turned down the idea in the first place? Because it makes common sense to me, but in your opinion.
I was a zone commander, and I was responsible for 200 square miles of our city. I offered to do it as a test pilot. I said, if it doesn't work, you put them right back downtown, and there's no harm, no foul. And I can tell you, in all the years I recommended it, no one brought up one reason why we shouldn't or couldn't do it. They just chose not to do it. My belief is, that's what status quo gets you. If you want change, you have to be willing to say, this isn't working, or it's not working as well as it could. We're going to stop doing this, and we're going to do that. And that's really the problem with our violent crime. We have the same person over our violent crime units for the last 4 years, and you've seen we've lost 100 people, 100 people, 100 people. And what we keep hearing from them is, it just needs a little more time. It needs a little more time.
Yeah.
We know what the definition is, so we keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result.
It's insanity.
Exactly. And we can't be afraid to say, that didn't work. We tried it. There's no shame in saying we're moving on to what's next. And I'm what's next.
Yes, because I'm not a big fan of pure violence, because I don't think it's doing anything to help anybody. But I'm going to go back to this zone commander thing. He was a zone commander. And I've always told you people watching this broadcast, my brothers and sisters on the north side, south side, east side, and west side, your zone commanders, having a good relationship with your zone commanders is critical to the safety of your community. JSO can only do as much as you are willing to allow them to do in your community. And you got to start reaching out to your zone commanders. Under his leadership, he's saying that, hey, there's going to be accountability to the community, which means zone commanders are going to have to get engaged. And I hate to see what would happen if a zone commander doesn't want to get engaged. Because under his leadership, they probably wouldn't make it very long. But, okay, so you come up with a plan that will deal with a lot of the inconsistencies of leadership. Now, one of the things that one of the pastors mentioned to me that he was concerned about was equal justice in all the zones. Because he stated that in some zones, we'll say black kids, because that happened to one of my kids. I mentioned to the last person that was on the show. He's getting a ticket for a headlight, not having a headlight on his bicycle. But on another zone, they don't get any tickets. So how do you plan to address, I guess, equality or equity in making sure that everybody is on the same page?
I don't believe in equity, because equity says no matter what you do, you get the same outcome. And we know that that's not really what we're achieving.
Right.
We want the smartest kids who are working the hardest to have the best outcomes because they worked for it. And so as it relates to law enforcement, it goes back to culture, number one. You need a sheriff who's going to make sure that when they drive down their culture to the officers, the men and women of the sheriff's office, that they understand the minutia that means. And that means treating everybody with respect. That means treating everybody fairly. Not equitably, but fairly. And so, one of the most important things an officer has at their disposal is discretion. Now, somebody would argue the other day, I think, that they said that's their most important weapon, but really, to take someone's liberty away, I would think trumps that. But the bottom line is, the discretion of an officer, we don't want to take that away, because there's circumstances you don't want to micromanage an officer. You want to give them a framework in which to work effectively. But you want them to understand, when you're doing something like you just described, that's outside of that framework. It's not acceptable, and that goes back to culture. When you establish the culture and you reinforce the culture, and I have a plan, once again, right now the sheriff sees the officers in the agency on average 4 times a year.
Wow.
I can tell you, there's 2 things that cops don't like. Change and the way things are.
Wow.
And I say that in tongue in cheek, but you have to understand that you're not going to make everybody happy no matter what you do. That's just the nature of working with people. But if you make a culture such that they understand that they're being heard and they're being valued, just like the community who wants to be heard and valued, that's what can cause a crisis to never happen.
Yeah.
When people feel like you're listening to them, you don't always have to agree with them, but they want to know that they have your ear and they have an opportunity. And so I have a very specific, exciting opportunity. I'm going to sort of hold this one close to my vest because I don't want people to poach it.
Yeah, no,
but
right.
I believe that when people talk about community civilian review boards, that what they're really talking about is they want more communication and they want more access to the
Transparency.
sheriff and transparency. You're exactly right. And so I have a plan that's going to, once again, this has never been done before, that I'm going to employ a sheriff that's going to do just that. And if you've ever heard the old adage, if you tell someone a story, by the time you get 7 people down, it sounds like a different story. There's nothing like hearing something straight from the horse's mouth.
That's true.
Whether it be from the sheriff to the officers, which I'm going to do, or from the sheriff to the community. And that goes back to passion. All this kind of stuff takes is time and willingness to invest yourself into it.
Wow. So let me ask you this. Okay, so there are quite a few people that are running for office. And let's focus on the mayoral candidates. As a sheriff, would you be willing to work with the mayor and the other elected officials to make things better for Jacksonville?
The best thing we have going in this city with respect to consolidation is the fact that we have constitutional officers that are peers, not subordinates. The most important distinction between having an elected sheriff and having an appointed chief is that an appointed chief is beholden to the mayor, the city council, or the city manager. If he doesn't subscribe to their ideology and uphold what they want to do, he or she is fired. The sheriff is beholden to one group of people, the most powerful people in this county, and that's you, the voter.
The people.
The people.
Power to the people.
And that's because there are groups that would try to take the elected sheriff away and make it an appointed sheriff. Don't ever let that happen, because that takes the power out of and control out of your hands as the voter.
So working with, I'm a big proponent and a fan of Al Ferrero. He has a plan to help bridge this gap with the community, the sheriff, and the mayoral office by building, I guess like a community-based review board. But he didn't say community review board. It was just something to get the community engaged and involved with the transparency of what's happening. Would you be a proponent of helping him establish something like that? That's, because I know as sheriff, you can't get everybody's opinion because you got to do your job. But there's got to be some opening there to where the community can come in and see. Because, like, I'm gonna bring up an incident with a young person being shot. They said he was shot in the head. They had this big old thing at the park not too long ago. And one of the big things they're complaining about is, there was not enough transparency about what happened. What are your thoughts about building that transparency about that? Just share with the world.
Back to the original question, which is would I work with the other elected officials? Absolutely. Not only would I be willing to, I've already met with them all. I already know them all. I worked with Al Ferraro for years as a liaison with JSO. I worked with Melissa Nelson when I was at Homicide 20 years ago. So I have deep relationships with these people already. So this is just a continuing relationship. It is critical, not only that we work together, but that we stay in our lane of expertise, meaning that it's not the mayor's job to provide public safety to the city. It's my job as your sheriff. It's the mayor to make sure that we have the resources necessary to provide a safe community. So that's important. I've had many conversations with Al about his views, and we will continue those if he is elected mayor and I'm elected sheriff, because they are critical to a successful and a safer city.
A dynamic duo, people. I don't know. I think I just built a dynamic duo. Al Ferrero and Mr. Nemeth. I don't know, man. This is exciting. I see a dynamic team forming here because I've talked to both of them. I spoke with our Mr. Alfarero and Mr. Nemeth, and I don't know. I think that if you guys don't take advantage of this opportunity with these two gentlemen, you're never going to have this opportunity again. And not in our lifetime anyway, because we're already getting old. So it's like, I mean, not you, but me. A lot of us watching. So it would behoove us to take advantage of this situation where we got a great mayoral candidate, a great sheriff's candidate, and there's a lot of great sheriff's candidates. I mean, I've had them on the show. And so I can't take sides just yet. We're gonna let them fight it out in the ring. But I'm just saying, you got an opportunity between establishment and non-establishment, status quo and real effective change. Because I've told you guys, how did Nashville, Tennessee become the great city that it is today? Through leadership, a mayor's department, city council, and the sheriff's department. And those guys up there started working together on one page to clean up the city. Look how beautiful that place is now. And Al Ferrero has a plan to get Jacksonville to be a world-class city. We have the potential to have a world-class sheriff with us. And so, with that being said, I want you, is there anything else you want to share with my beloved audience? Anything you want to tell them?
As people, and I hope all of you will, do your due diligence and look at all the candidates, because I'm not afraid to put out I believe that past performance is indicative of future behavior. So when you look at my past, I'm a big believer in moving the needle so that where I was is better when I left it than when I found it. And one of the things I would say as you compare us is neither the men and women of the sheriff's office nor you as the community member want a victim as sheriff. You, the men and women of the sheriff's office, want a leader who's going to stand in front of them, who's going to lead and guide them, and really make it very clear what their expectations are as a leader. The community wants a sheriff, once again, who's going to stand between them and their loved ones and those who want to do them harm, not someone who's going to stand behind them and let whatever's going to happen. And so, if you want a strong leader, if you want someone who is committed to standing in front of you and leading the city in a direction toward a safer tomorrow, take a look at me. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how much more plain this can be. We have an opportunity to make Jacksonville great. World-class city. Change is going to happen, whether we like it or not. Whether it's going to come with the next administration of establishment, they're going to change things for their benefit, or we can do the non-establishment, it's going to change things for everyone's benefit. Not only the north side, but the central side, the east side, the west side, and south side. We got an opportunity. So I'm going to encourage everybody. Do your due diligence, do your research, reach out to him. I'll put his link on my website, and all you got to do is just reach out to him. I'll put it on the top of this video too. And if you want to reach out to him, he's very approachable. If you got questions for him, hit him with the questions. If you want him to come back on the show, I'll bring him back. But I always ask this question, because there's another candidate running for sheriff. Would you be open to having maybe a discussion or debate with another candidate?
I'd be happy to. I actually want to.
You guys know me for controversy, so I might have to make that happen. So we're going to look into getting these sheriffs together, and email me questions, text me questions, whatever you got to do. Give me questions to ask each and one of these candidates. And let's see which one gives us the best answer. And let's just let them fight it out with their words, man. If they want to win, they got to prove that they're the champion. And I think we got a good champion. We got we got two good champions that I'm looking at. So it's just a matter of which one's going to get the vote. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to delay anymore. Y'all got things to do. I got things to do. So let me close with my famous saying. You do as much good as you can while you can. The best thing that you can do right now is get engaged with this election, because it's going to change the future of Jacksonville, not only for us, but also for our children and our grandchildren. So with that being said, God bless, and I'll see y'all later.